My name is Caleb Taylor, and this is Get Them Out. With the recent presidential election wrapping up, it is safe to say that the majority of Americans did not want 4 more years of Donald Trump. That being said, Donald Trump can run again, and if he does win, well, he'll only get one more term. Why is that? That's because the president has a term limit, and that prevents him from ever becoming a dictator. Now, it's quite interesting how our other government officials don't have term limits. It's not like the legislative branch can send us to war or make the laws that affect American citizens. And it's not like our Supreme Court justices, who, by the way, don't even need us as American citizens to be nominated and placed on the Supreme Court, interpret the laws. Nah, it's not like that. Actually, it is like that. And it's terrible. You wanna know why it's important to me, and it should also be important to you? It's because you're an American citizen, a taxpayer, a voter, and as all of the above, we should be responsible for holding our government officials accountable for their actions. And one way to make sure that they don't abuse their power is to impose term limits. One of the main reasons why they should have a term limit is because their views can fall out of line with the views of an average American citizen. As of 2018, the average age of an American was around 40 years old, while the average age for a government official was 60 years old. There's a 20-year age gap right there, and policies that are important to a 60-year-old are slightly different than policies that are important to a 40-year-old. For example, let's take Roe v. Wade that's about to go back to the Supreme Court in 2021. Now, for those who don't know, Roe v. Wade legalized abortion in the 70s. And since the average American is around 40 years of age, that would mean that abortion was legal for basically their entire life. Yet, that's going back to the Supreme Court to be debated on whether or not it should be legalized. And according to NPR, majority of Americans want abortion being legalized, or they're okay with abortion being legal. You want to know something that is on the mind of 40-year-old Americans though? College debt and the cost of college. And according to Yahoo, approximately 30 million Americans have $30,000 plus in student loans and college debt. Now, that's the issue a lot of Americans are concerned about. Yet, you don't really hear that on the news that often, and you really don't hear legislation being talked about what someone can do about our student loans. Interesting. So our government officials would rather fight about Roe v. Wade, which legalized abortion, and which majority of Americans are okay with, than actually figure out what majority of Americans are concerned about. Well, that's why they should have a term limit. So they can get people in who actually care about what's happening to the American people as of right now, instead of worrying about something that happened before they were born. Another reason why our government officials should have term limits is because the president has one. Now, the president has a term limit because they honor George Washington. George Washington decided to only serve 2 terms, and from then on, only one president has ever served more than 2 terms, and that was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And according to historian Lindsay Kennedy, the only reason he served more than 2 terms was because they were going through a trying time in American history. Franklin Delano Roosevelt served during the Great Depression and into the transition of World War II. So, as American people, they really didn't want to switch it up as we were entering a war. They wanted stability. And that's why Franklin Delano Roosevelt served for 4 terms. And after he served for 4 terms, well, legislation was passed to make sure that the president could only serve twice. So, it's kind of interesting. Not only are there no congressmen or Supreme Court justices that set the example for those to follow, there's also no legislation limiting how long they can run. In fact, according to the Senate.gov webpage, some senators could serve for 50 plus years and have served for 50 plus years. And the reason that's important is because the longer they serve, the more network connections they make, the more experience they quote unquote gain, the more influence they have on pushing legislation. So not only can it serve for a long time, they can also push legislation that fit their needs more than the needs of the average American citizen. That's interesting. And don't even get me started on our Supreme Court justices, since they served till they died. Hey, they can interpret the law the same way they interpreted it when they were 20, when, let's say, something controversial or racist was acceptable. And now, maybe 30 years later, with that same mindset, that's not how the majority of American people think. But since they serve for life, that's how they think, and that's how American policies are being judged. And final strong reason why there should be term limits for government officials is because our government officials are too focused on power plays and maintaining power than actually passing legislation. One of the first articles CNN published on the night of the election was, Democrats will keep control of the House. Now you might be wondering, alright, so what? Well, it's not really about who controls the House, is it? It's about who wins. Because if the Democrats control the House, they're going to push their own legislation, right? But not all Americans are Democrats. So, the Democrats control the House. Are they just going to push their legislation on the American people without the American people actually being able to vote and say, hey, we don't like that? It's because of a two-party system. And because people stay for office forever long, policies that are important to Democrats who are older are going to be put on to the Democrats that are younger. And from there, that's the only thing that's going to be talked about. Another example, once again, the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is now conservative. It's a power play. So now all the laws that are being tried, well, basically, Republicans get to push their legislation and say yay or nay, instead of actual things that are important to Americans. And that's just because they live there. They get to stay in office for however long they want. And so their views are quote unquote the American views now. That's not right. Now some people might be saying, hey, we vote them in so we can vote them out. Wrong. According to CNBC, incumbents have a 90% chance of winning re-election. And for those who don't know, incumbents are those who are already in office and running again. So although we have the power to vote them out, 90% of the time we don't. That's a little tidbit. Another thing, people like to say, well, hey, they're not as powerful as the president. They make our laws. Yes, they are. And in fact, let's counter the argument. Nancy Pelosi, House Representative, and Mitch McConnell, the Senate Representative, each powerful in their respective party, they push legislation for the party. So whatever Nancy Pelosi agrees to or disagrees with, that's what the Democrats do, and that's what the House pushes forward. And whatever Mitch McConnell, a Republican, agrees with or disagrees with, that's what goes through and becomes law. And whatever he doesn't like doesn't become law. They're powerful because they create our laws. And if they stay in office for a long time, they could push laws that they've been trying to do since maybe they were 20 and they were 30 that are outdated in modern times. And that's why they should have term limits. Because not only are they powerful, it's a game to them. They just want power. They're caring less and less about American citizens, but more about pushing their own personalized agendas onto us. With a term limit, we'll get a fresh rotation of new people. People that are actually like you and me. People who have legit concerns about the way America is being run. But if our government officials don't have term limits, They can keep running America the way they want it. And then when they're long and gone, it's only going to be us left to deal with the mess. Thank you.